Hello, hello. If you're here right now, I assume you're watching the VOD. Oh wait, let me get this audio situation fixed up. All right. So it's been a minute since I've been live and around recording and posting on YouTube. I have been working on the Zerve app, but gosh, it's a bit of a mess, not gonna lie. I've gone and made a little bit of a mess of my project, and I've tried to collect my sanity around it, but my sanity is currently very far from collected. Before I start rambling too much, I want to wait to see if anyone wants to show up to the stream. Actually, I'm not sure if anyone's here. Feel free to say hi if you do pull up and chat. And if you're watching the VOD, definitely drop a comment because I want to hear from you, even if you can't tune in live. It means a lot that anyone's here to see what's going on the project at all. I appreciate any companionship on this project because it's extremely exciting to me. But I think it should be exciting to lots of people because the idea is to help build something that lots of people can benefit from. Let me show you where the app is right now. I want to do a quick demo of what the app currently looks like. And pretty soon we'll see why I feel like the project is such a mess and why, to a certain extent, I went back to the drawing board. Literally, I did physically go back to the drawing board. I did a few things on paper, but then I went into Figma. So that's what the plan is to kind of recap the mess that it is, that we're in right now. So let's take a look. Hang on. Oh, and I do need to pull up the Twitch dashboard. Just in case anyone shows up, I want to see what my tiny little viewer count is. Okay, good. No one's in here. That's just what I wanted to double check. But it's okay because we have the VOD, and I'm going live and documenting this stuff for myself just as much as I am for anybody else, because this is really important for me. And in case someone does want to check in on the VOD, I want you to see it. So, welcome, Jacob. Thank you for pulling up into chat. I want to show you this app that I've been working on. I do have a YouTube channel where you can see a little bit more about what I've started. YouTube. So here's the link to the YouTube, but let me just show you the actual app because it's a little bit further along than the last time I was talking about it. But yeah, the YouTube is really where all the content is at the moment. Where's the main? Okay, so here's the app. Right now I'm running it on web and React Native, and it's actually using a lot of the same code. It's totally the same code base. So, oops, I don't want you to see that yet. This is the stuff that I was working on, but first I'm showing the app that the way it kind of looks like right now. I have a different version of the app running compared to what I run or what I will be running when it's deployed. So it's kind of a simplified version of the server. And the way it works is I've got the GitHub checked out and everything. And in the GitHub, it's a monorepo, a TypeScript monorepo. And if you want to run it, you can check out the repo and then run yarn and then run yarn dev. And I'm also running dev::mobile, and that basically starts up the server for the React Native app. So I can change my code right now, and it's going to update both the website and the React Native app. And it's running a simplified server that basically is just giving a single store, where in a real app, in a real production version, we're going to want to make it so that there's one store available per user, or actually every user should be able to create their own stores in their own namespace. So it's going to get more complicated, but this is what it's like right now to basically use the product. Here's the mobile version, and here's the web version. And it's the same exact code that's rendering each of these things. And if you haven't seen this before, if it's your first time here, you might not know what Zerve does, and it's basically a content management system meant to basically allow you to change data that inside of your app, and then you can give this dashboard, or you can give this app to the people at your company so that they can change the content, or change settings, or turn features on and off, depending on what you need. But basically, it's a JSON database, primarily meant for configuring your application. Seems like I can explain it at least somewhat if Jacob thinks it's neat. At least I've managed to articulate it a little bit. But the idea here is that for this store, we're keeping track of what are the FAQ, like what's the frequently asked questions that's going to be on our website. So the idea is we're going to wire this up to our website eventually. I haven't actually done this. It's not actually being used anywhere, but this data can then be used by non-technical people, and they can jump into the app and change the FAQ. And it currently looks pretty bad. It looks like it's a kind of a half-built JSON editor that is a functional JSON editor, but it's a half-built JSON editor, and that's what it is. So if we tap on this, we can see this is our JSON data, and we can add a new item here, and it's basically constraining our data. Okay, this is really ugly. In fact, I'm going to stop showing you on web because on mobile it's a little bit more presentable. So here basically FAQ is an array, and it's an array of objects, and there's two objects in here. The first object has a question on it, and that question has this text inside of it, and that's all that's in that object. And we can change this text and say, like, what is Zerve? Oops, let's get that keyboard. What is Zerve? And we can close this, and we can hit save, and now our file has been changed. And our website automatically reloads when it gets refocused, so it sees that change. And then we can access this from our API. So this is functioning. And to go a little bit deeper into it, we might want to see, like, what is the schema of FAQ. We can hit edit schema. We can see that it's a list. And it's a list of what? It's a list literally of this other type. So this looks super ugly, but it's a pretty powerful feature where we've specified a schema out here where basically we can reuse these schemas anywhere inside of our store. And we're saying that a question, oh my god, it's so ugly. But this is a schema for an object. And these are the properties of that object. So right now there's a question property, and we can add an answer property, because you need to have a question and an answer for your Q&A entry. And the answer is also a text. And we can change the schema for the answer text, but this is all we need. So now we can go and hit Save Schema. So now when we come here and to edit our FAQ and we tap into one of these things, we might need to do a refresh here. This stuff is still super buggy. I'm just kind of showing off the amount of the product that does work so far. Now we can see that there's a question and an answer that we need to provide for each of our FAQ entries. So what is Zerve? It is a CMS and other things. And now we're working on our CMS, or our FAQ data. And we can access this data through an API, a REST API. But this is the key stuff that I've been working on, is basically taking this mobile app and making it work here on the web, at least to some extent. And it's not the worst thing. It's not the most embarrassing it could possibly be. It sort of works, but right now there's no login system. And in fact, previously on the last stream that I was doing, I was saying, oh, okay, I'm going to be working on the authentication system. And that was my plan, was to make it so that you can log in seamlessly on web. And I did make a lot of progress on that. But then I got to this step where basically I'm actually using the app from the website. And it just feels like crap for a bunch of different reasons. One reason is that a modal on web kind of works differently from a modal on React Native. So inside of React Native, for example, it doesn't necessarily feel weird that we can go deep into several modals, because they just keep on covering the full screen, no problem. But on web, several nested modals cause all sorts of troubles, not just from a user interface perspective where it feels a little weird to have all these different modals open, but also from an implementation perspective. I'm having troubles with several modals, and rather than fixing those modals, I kind of went back to the drawing board. But first, let me show you a little bit more concretely. If I tap into this, this is a modal. And there can be data inside of here that I might want to edit and tap on to get further into it. And I think the best example for that is probably the schema. So we're looking at our schema. This is the schema of our object. Gosh, it needs some formatting help here. It does need formatting help. But it's actually maybe not quite as far off from being decent as I think. It might be. This is a very fixable stuff, because you are looking at a real schema of an object. And now when we tap into this, we're looking at a modal. And then say we want to customize the schema for, okay, loud things are happening outside. Okay. So say you want to customize this schema. So now we're in another modal. So we've got all these modals that happen on top of each other. Now, do you want to see what that looks like on the web side of things? Because it's not going to be good. On schemas, we go into our answered question. We go into here. So this is the modal. It didn't animate and doesn't look quite right, but it is a functioning modal that's showing us all of our different properties. But then when I click Add Property, it's going to give me a text input that now, this modal is replacing the other modal. And then if I leave out of it, I've lost the context here. So having two modals on top of each other is not ideal technically because of this bug here where the behind modal gets totally lost and closed, probably because of the way I've implemented it. But even from a UI perspective, it's not ideal. You don't really want 5 layers of modals to stack up on top of each other. And the main reason is because it's hiding all this other important content behind it. So this is the UI of the application right now, but I've really, especially on web, when you have all the real estate, leaning on these modals has really not made much sense. So I've had to rethink some of this stuff. For example, if we tap here into a schema inside of, this is the second level of modal. Now we've lost the level of modal that was behind it. But also, even if this wasn't buggy, it wouldn't be a good user experience. So now I'm left thinking how can I iterate on this? How can I improve it? Because it's not just the modals. Look at the web experience when it takes the full screen. It's only using a mobile width worth of things. So I haven't actually designed this for desktop consumers yet, and that's a problem because desktop consumers are the most important. That's going to be how this is going to be primarily used. People on their desktop are going to be wanting to change the data inside of their application. It's a cherry on top that it's available as a mobile app. Most content management systems don't have a really great mobile app for this sort of thing. But it needs to shine really, really well on web. And it really got me thinking about how I would use the screen real estate if I didn't have any of the constraints that I currently have. Because right now I'm constrained to basically making this share code with mobile. And there are different constraints. So literally what I did, after I got into this issue with the nesting modals, I got frustrated and I said, oh, I don't want to fix the modals. I want to redesign the entire web experience so that it uses the full size, the full screen. So really, that's what I was alluding to when I was talking about how this project is a total mess right now, is that the implementation, I got so far down the implementation, and then I said, this doesn't look right, this doesn't feel right, especially on web. I want to go and think about this from paper, from design documents, from Figma. So that's what I did. And so it's been a little bit of a distraction. I have not gotten much done on the code because I've spent maybe 2 days working on figuring out what the UI should be on web. And I want to show you some of that progress. So let me jump over to, that's the full camera. Now you can really see me. Natural lighting today, because I'm packing up my apartment so that I can go move to Europe for a few months. Okay, let me get into a good state to show you where my brain has been. main wide. I'll ask where I'm going in Europe. I hope to be a nomad actually for at least a little while. I've really wanted to try doing the digital nomad thing for a while. So at the beginning of the year, I bought a one-way ticket to Southern Europe, the cheapest ticket I could find into Southern Europe, and it takes me into Barcelona, and I'm so excited. One of my React friends, Horatio, actually is currently living in Barcelona, so I'm really excited to meet up with Horatio. Oh, you're in Sweden. Oh my gosh, Jacob, that's exciting. You know why? Because my stepbrother is living in Stockholm right now. It has been for a few years, and I'm going to be visiting Stockholm as well. So that's great. I'm hoping to meet a lot more friends in Europe. Hopefully some tech friends who are interested in this sort of thing. But that's awesome that you're in Sweden. Hope to be in your neighborhood not too long from now, maybe 2 months, month and a half. But cool. Anyways, I've been thinking about, what does the web experience look like when we're not constrained to the mobile app? And I've also been kind of visualizing it with some colors, trying to figure out, what are the different very abstract things. So I want to go over, what are all these different colors and what they mean, because they're kind of different contexts that you can be in on the website. It's a little bit more complicated than the mobile app, or at least compared to most mobile apps, because mobile apps don't usually have a blog and a website and all this sort of web stuff. So on the web side of things, there's the home page, right, which is literally just represented as a block here. It's all the stuff that's on the home page. And it will link to various other parts of the website. Oops, I accidentally changed that. Where's So it'll have a link to the pricing page for the SaaS, and it's open source, but I do want to have a hosted SaaS for people who don't want to run it themselves. So of course you can self-host if you're interested, but a lot of people just want to use the service, and that's how I want to make a little bit of money. So from the website, you can see the documentation, access the blog, which a lot of this is content that does not really exist right now. But also, in the sake of full transparency, because hey, I'm showing you the mess. This is all about the mess that I've made with the Zerve project and how scatterbrained I've been. So, of course, this presentation is going to be messy as well. I'll show you. Look, docs.zerve.app. I have put up a documentation site. Technically, don't look at this. Pretend I didn't show you this. You don't even want to see it. There's no actual content here, really. Just a few small half-done files. But the docs will exist. I've decided to just use Docusaurus because it's going to be the fastest way to get going. And also, I have a special relationship with the Docusaurus project. So that's why I have a special place in my heart for Docusaurus, because I was involved in the inception of it. But there's no content there. The whole point of Docusaurus is to just make it easy for you to write Markdown and get to work actually writing docs. And I have not really done that. I've organized a little bit of the docs, but really, that's one way that this project is a total mess, is the non-existent docs site. But anyways, from the home page, basically there's a workflow that you can access. It's not actually its own screen, but you're accessing a workflow, probably in a modal, a pop-up comes up and gives you the ability to log in and sign up, and then it takes you to your user home, which is your dashboard for the logged in user, right? And from here, you can access things like the account settings, and you can create a project. And also in this big diagram, I want to make sure that I'm designing the user experience for the more mature product. So even though the product does not have orgs yet, orgs are super important, so that way you can have a team that basically shares several projects, and you can add people to that team. I'm kind of going from the GitHub model of things. Not like it's just GitHubs. A lot of apps work this way, where there's projects. Like in GitHub, they're repositories. I'm calling them projects. They can exist either inside of the user or exist inside of the home. So every project will optionally have a org, and if it doesn't have an org, it'll just be owned by a user. And so you can create a project from either within inside the user or from inside of the org. And then once you create a project, you get to the project home. And this is pretty similar to what we've already been demoing, actually. Like the equivalent of the product home in the mobile app right now is this. It's called a store instead of a project right now, but I probably want it to be a project. I don't know. Store is also pretty specific because it's like a bucket of data. You know, literally, it's actually it can be implemented as a folder on disk, and that might be how I want to keep things super simple for now. So this is the equivalent of the project home because it's giving you a link to what is the history of things that have happened in the project, and it's giving us all of the schemas that are sort of project level schemas or store level schemas. So that's the project home, and you can navigate into the history, into the schemas. You can create a file, which is a currently working experience. And once you're looking at a file, you can look at the file's schema. And you can also look at the project level schemas. So these are all the different contexts. We're still drilling down into the very deep context of the application that our UI needs to be able to navigate. And logically navigate, too, at that. Right? So here, if we tap on this FAQ, this is a file. So now we're looking at a file here. And here's one thing where we have like recursive abilities, where inside of a file, you might need to be looking, you can only be looking at so much data at once. And the file might be a really big piece of JSON that you need to be able to browse and navigate. So if I tap on one of these things, that's navigating into some of the file's data. And here, this is as deep as it goes, but I might need to navigate further in case my data is super complicated. So for that reason, there's kind of this recursive ability where you might need to continue navigating deeper into your file data. So our application needs to handle that from a website, from a navigation perspective. And on a mobile app, it's not that big of a deal if we're hiding up everything else. Like we don't see any other data except for the deepest node right now on the mobile app. But on the web app, we don't really want that constraint because we have more screen real estate. We want to be able to access more of it. OK, so from all of these, from this diagram, I was looking at it and saying, OK, well, what do we need to build from here? Like, what is the structure that we can fit all of these things into? Because it's a little bit complicated. There's so many different contexts that you can be in. You can be in the public web context. You can be looking at something that's just about your user. You can be looking at something about an org that's shared between several users. You're looking at your project, and then you can look at one piece of data deeply within that project. So anyways, my next step was to go and make these diagrams where I'm basically just taking these colors and I'm putting them in different areas of the screen. And I want to give you a good walkthrough of what this looks like from a UX perspective. And then finally, after I got this UX kind of worked out, I made a visual design. So I'll show you that afterwards. So here's web, or public. This purple is our public thing. So it's really simple. This is just, I didn't bother spending much time on this design. Basically, I'm thinking for the home page, it's going to be a full bleed design, which means it's going to take the full width of the screen. There's not going to be any sidebars or anything like that. And then there's going to be one floating navigation bar at the top of the screen that's going to have some links. And it's going to have a big button that lets you log in, that gives you the authentication process. And that's about it. So you basically scroll up and down on the big web page, enjoying the content, hopefully getting really excited about Zerve, and then you press login. The login experience happens inside of a modal on top of this, and then it takes you to the user context. So it has a similar floating navigation bar that's always at the top of the screen. And on the left, there is a link to the public website. So this is pretty common. Basically, it's going to be an icon. You click the Zerve icon, and it takes you back here. So if you need to see the pricing from your user screen, you tap on the public Zerve icon, and then you'll tap on the pricing link inside of the navigation here. OK, so what else from the perspective of the user? Now, once you're logged in, I'm using a lot of really standard paradigms here. I'm trying to keep it kind of flexible and innovative, but also to meet users' expectations. So what do users expect? Well, when they're logged in, you get the corner they get their avatar in the corner. So that's what's going to happen here, is the user's avatar will go up in the corner whenever you're logged in. Whenever you're logged in and in a logged in context, you'll see this dashboard navigation. You'll see this link to your user account, to this user's home screen, basically. And you've got the link back to the public site. And then in the user's page, we have what's known as a master detail screen, where basically there's a sidebar, this user nav. It's got a bunch of different links, and it's showing which is the active thing. So it's going to be all these different user screens, like maybe one screen for changing the user's public settings, like their profile photo and their name. Another screen that's helping them log in or change their password. Another screen that's helping them manage their email addresses and phone numbers that are associated. And those screens don't exist yet, so I'm getting ahead of myself. But that's what's going to be here, is user-level navigation. And then also there will be links to create a new project. There'll be links to access the user's projects. And there will be links to see the user's orgs. And once you tap on an org, you get into this org level screen. And this looks very similar. It says the org at the top here, so you know kind of where you are just by looking at the sidebar. And we also have the content area. So it's another master detail where you've got sort of links on the side saying like, what are the team members? And then here is the actual content of like the form for adding or removing team members. And in this case, the org is not in the navigation bar, but it perhaps could be. It's actually not that big of a deal, I think. It could go either way, where the title for the section is either here at the top of the sidebar or it's up here. But the important thing is that once you're in a project, it does show you your full context, including the org. So when you're looking at a project, when you're on the home screen for a project, it will certainly show the org if the project is in an org. Otherwise, this won't be here, and the project would just be owned by this user. Okay, so this is the sidebar for the project, and this is these same set of links that we were looking at, like the ability to change the history, edit the schemas, and we'll add project settings to this, so you can look at the project settings. And also there will be, on the sidebar is a list of files. So you'll be able to tap on the files, and maybe you'll be able to tap it on an individual file. Maybe you'll tap on just something that says files, and then when you tap on the sidebar item that says files, it takes you to a list of files here on the right side. But in any case, once you've opened a file, the file shows up on the sidebar. Because now the sidebar here, this project navigation, is offering context about what's going on the right side of the screen. Because over here, it's actually showing you the actual file that you've opened. So in this case, in my little example here, FAQ, frequently asked questions, is the name of the file. So your sidebar would say, oh, you're on the FAQ, and it would show the file right here. But this file has multiple depths, right? There's this depth, where you're looking at the full file, and then you can drill in to some specific data. So that's what would be going on here. Is if you tap on one of the items of the FAQ inside of this file screen, it will open it up in this extra screen. And the sidebar will go and reflect and say, oh, look, you're looking at some data that's specifically within the file. So this is a way that we can kind of utilize the screen real estate. So if you have a lot of width, you have more columns of content. So more yellow columns that give you more depth, and you can see more of your data. Now, what happens when you go even deeper? Well, if you go deeper, basically I'm trying to figure out how do I provide context once you drill deeply into a file. I'm actually going to skip this step because this is a little bit, I'm not entirely sure if I want to have this little piece up here which provides context saying that, look, this data is within the FAQ file. It tells you what file you're in. So I'm going to skip that and show you this part, which is what happens if you have less screen real estate, less horizontal width available. We're going to lay things out differently. We're only going to show the deepest relevant data. So here we're still showing on the sidebar that you're in the FAQ file, and you're on the FAQ section, or you're on what section of the file you're within. And this is basically saying exactly where you are in the file. And if you want to navigate to other areas, if you want to maybe go to the root of the file, no problem, you just click this and you lose this context and it takes you back out to the file, which looks kind of like this. And so now this is great as long as you have this sidebar. But you might not have the width available for that sidebar, right? Because on a phone, you just don't have that width. And you could still be on the phone, but not within the mobile app. You need the web experience for the phone. And on web, you're always kind of rendering navigation, content, and links inside of your own application. So it's not like you can put stuff outside of the back button or above the navigation bar or something like that, like you could on a mobile app where you don't need the navigation bar because it's an actual app. So here I've gone and created a little mock-up for what it looks like when you're a phone. And you can see that a lot of the context is not necessarily available here. You still have the top level navigation bar, but you can only see the user and the project. And maybe up here you can scroll to get additional context of like what org you're in and if you want access to the Zerve homepage. And the second layer is more context. So this is another row that's kind of telling you where you are right now. It tells you already know that you're within this project, but now you know you're within this file, and even more specifically within this little piece of data in the project. And here you can finally expose the file itself, or the content that we're trying to get to. So this has been like the UX portion of the journey, where I was taking all these different features and trying to figure out how to lay them out so that the way the user can access everything, conveniently, will have access to get to all the different pieces of context, right? They might want to get to the home screen. They might want to get to their user account context. They might want to see their org. They might want to see their project. And then inside of the files, they want to be able to drill down. So now that I had a structure, it really came down to working on the visual design. And this is when my mood started to elevate a little bit, when I got to focus on the visual design, because I do see myself as a UX designer, but I rarely see myself as a visual designer. But visual design is really necessary here. So this was fun to sort of dive in to visual design when I'm not used to it. But what I was doing is basically taking this. Which one did I take? I started with this layout. And I literally brought it into the Figma visual design. This is the Figma whiteboard thing. And well, I'm loving Figma, even as a total noob. It's been very, very easy to use. So let me just show you, without further ado, what this looks like when I've combined it with real-looking user data, user experience, and I've made it a somewhat nice visual design. This is like the best I can do with a few hours of effort. And this is what it looks like. So here we can see the exact same layout that we had before, and I'm just going to walk you through it really quickly. We've got the Zerve icon in the corner that you can click to get to the Zerve public home screen. You can click this. This is your organization. This will take you to your organization level context. And this is your project. And it's, of course, telling you that everything that you're in down here is inside of my project, inside of this organization, Acme Incorporated. And on the right, of course, you can see I've got a little photo of myself, a little avatar that I can click to if I want to get to my user stuff. If I want to get to my user home, or if I want to change my password or anything like that, or if I want to log out. And then here on the left, we have the project level navigation. So here we're able to see everything that's going on within the project. If we want to access the project level schemas, access the project history, or change settings, there's links here, and of course it'll act as a master detail and focus this content that's over on the right, whatever it is that's selected. But here, we're deep down in a very specific context. The equivalent is to be in the actually deep data. We're deep down in the file data, and here's what we're saying, is we're saying that we have a file called home content, and this is even more of a deep data dive than we have on the app right now, because the file is called home content, and there's a property inside of home content called FAQ, but we're drilled all the way down deep. That's why this right pane actually is a little bit more highlighted. The right pane is a little bit more highlighted, and we can see here on the sidebar that we're focused all the way on a specific item. So here we can see several layers of JSON editing that's not stacked behind all these modals. For example, if I want to, even though I'm editing something very deep inside of the JSON, over here, I3 on the right, this is this third question. It's the ID of the third question. We can still edit these other things. Like I can go and rearrange the questions here, and I can flip this switch if I want to change this totally irrelevant piece of data that's also in the same file. And this is just as an example. You can have a file that means a lot more. This file refers to everything that's quote unquote home content. It includes a banner that is an optional banner. Currently it's empty. So if I want to say, announce in a rush, like, oh my gosh, we just raised $2 million. I need to put this on. Or if I say, oh, we just got acquired by some big company, we would need to go and update our banner, have a link to our new company, our new parents, as an adoptee startup. And here, of course, there's a switch of, maybe you want to disable new users at a certain time, and you can make it so that as part of your authentication, your sign-in process, you check to make sure that new users are allowed right now by just checking this API. And here, for example, users are allowed. So this is the visual approach to the same exact thing. So hopefully, because I showed the application using the same sort of data at the beginning, hopefully there's a little awareness of what's going on here. And that when you see this visual design, after this long-winded explanation, you get some awareness of what it's like to actually use and what actually is going on here. So you can select different questions. If I were to tap on this, it would select a different thing over here in the right pane. So in a sense, this is acting like a master detail, to really drill down into the data. And we really need a new term for that, by the way. We're trying to improve our terminology, and it's like a sidebar navigation. I think I'm just going to call it sidebar navigation as opposed to the other thing. And yeah, because you can kind of see what it's like in the app when we come in and we change some data, you can see that this question and answer lines up. This is the same thing as this. So you can say, how old? Oh, it's out of order. How old is Zerve? Zerve, and you can say Eric started working on Zerve in 2009, about 13 years ago. Only a slight exaggeration. Okay, so that's the FAQ, and we can hit save. So one thing that was missing from our mock-up over here is the save dialog, something that says, oh, you've changed some of the data inside of the home content file. Like, would you like to save it or discard those changes? And ideally, you'd even be able to provide a commit message at the time when you're saving, but that sounds like a problem for future Eric. And speaking of future Eric's problems, let's think about what I should do to go from the current state that I'm in to make the application look like this beautiful thing that I have visually designed. It really does bring a lot of energy to me by just looking at something that's a lot prettier than the real application. I'm sure it's also very energizing to see the application actually work, even if it's ugly. But I need to make it so that it works and it looks beautiful. So what are the different steps here? One of the reasons I've been struggling actually is because I don't have a UI library that I'm building on that I really believe in right now, or have a combination of having adopted and have belief in. So I've been looking at a few different options, and there's always new UI libraries coming up every single week. So if this were a few years ago, my options would be like this. My options would be native base and UI kitten. Oh, I guess these are the examples. So React Native UI Kitten is kind of an older, it's like an Ava-based design system for React Native. And it kind of has web support. Native Base does have pretty good web support. But these libraries, like, they just keep coming. So Dripsy has been pretty popular for maybe a year now. A lot of people in the React Native world have been using Dripsy, and it has this pretty nice API. But the downside with Dripsy, at least in my mind, the biggest downside is if you look at all of the components they have available, you're like left looking for components because they actually don't build most of the components for you. Dripsy is much more of a building block for design systems than it is a design system itself. And I want something that's kind of both because I want to have a big list of components that I can choose between over here. And there's basically nothing here. There's just like very primitive things like gradients, and then you can use view and text input with Dripsy. So what else? There's one that's been coming up. It's kind of, this might be the one that I explore next, probably is, Tamagui. It's like the Tamagotchi. You can tell from the logo, it's got this little kind of Tamagotchi style logo. It's like a little pet that you're taking care of. And this is a design system for React Native, for React Native and React Native Web, so it supports web really well. But it also has like some components. Like I'm scrolling here. Notice I can scroll between all these different components, and it's like, okay, some of them I don't really care about, like avatar. This is just like a rounded image. But there are some things that are really good. Like slider, this is great. Like this is a slider that works on React Native and web, and it's got great keyboard support. Like here I am manipulating it with a keyboard. Progress, well, I don't really care about this one. Input and text area. Getting this right is so critical. So I actually haven't really explored this. I don't know if this is really a high quality input, but when it comes to form inputs, it's really important to get something that is helpful for me because there's so much nuance to these things, and I can't spend all day working on this nuance. So Tamagui is very exciting to me. And there's another one that's even newer than Tamagui, where Tamagui is like just in beta for a few months now, or it's just been kind of in general availability V1 for a few months. Like not long ago, there were like no components, but I was still looking at it because the performance looks really good. This is the page that like really got me excited about Tamagui because they have a bunch of tricks that they use to basically compile ahead of time and compile away the styles so that it's just incredibly fast in comparison to the alternatives. Oh, and there's also stitches. And I forgot that emotion works on... Yeah, emotion and styled components kind of work on React Native as well. But those aren't really design systems. Those are just kind of styling systems. So I want to use the highest level thing that I can that works across web and React Native, which is a big challenge. It's not super common that you get those things. So Tamagui is really exciting because it has a cohesive design system, it looks fast on both platforms, and it also has components for me to use. And last up, the brand new one is called Universal UI. I don't know if this is the right URL. Oh, cool. This is definitely the right URL. I don't know if they have many docs yet. Let me go to the GitHub. Packages, design system. Okay, so this is Universal UI. This is the source code for it. They have a lot of different components. I like that they have a really cohesive amount of components. Like if we look at this is one of the most cohesive lists of components that we've seen so far. For example, select. Does select work? Oh, this is disabled select. Select. Okay, so select is one of those tricky things. This feels a little funky to use. I don't know why. It just feels kind of slow. But and also I'm not a huge fan of these visual designs, like the how curved these border radiuses are is like a little excessive. Like that's a lot of curvature, and it seems like the drop down is not perfectly offset. Anyways, I have some nitpicks here, but this design system is so cohesive. There's so many things that you would need in your average application. Here's the modal sheet. So the modal looks a little bit funky. It looks like, there's no animations or anything. And what's funny is, this was the new one as of like 2 weeks ago or as of a week ago. But I also saw Fernando Rojo tweeting about something that kind of has some overlap with what this does. Should I look that up now? Are any of the viewers here interested in design system stuff? Should I continue to ramble about this, or should I cut it off? I'm going to do a quick look to see if I can find Fernando's latest project. Okay, it's called Zego. Let's take a quick look at this. I took a glance earlier. So menus for React Native. So this is handling a very specific use case. This is handling the problem of the dropdown, actually. So Dripsy doesn't have anything that helps with like the dropdown. And then if you look at Tamagui, they don't have a dropdown. I think they have a select that actually on web uses the native select. Oh, I'm getting my projects mixed up. So Tamagui doesn't have this at all. And in my project, actually, I needed to do something because on React Native, we have this dropdown. Let's see if I can find one. Oh, here's a dropdown. So what it's using here is React Native bottom sheet. So bottom sheet gives us this like cool animation and also gives us this gesture. So if we want to swipe down this thing, it works really well. It's a very performant experience. And even for a dropdown, like if we're inside of a file schema, go into a schema, it's a dropdown. This is also using the bottom sheet. So this is really a select component. Now on web, I'm using Radix. Now I want to render my own select component rather than using the built-in browser select, because ultimately there's going to be a lot of menus and sub-menus inside of there for certain things that you want to be able to select. Because right now, our list of schemas is not that big. We only have like 5 different schemas, 10 different schemas you can use. There will be a lot more schema options in here, so we need to have special UI inside of our select. I don't want to just use the built-in browser select. So native base, for example, I think they're the ones. Native base has a select component, if I can find their component list. Where is how do I see the list of components? Just get me to your sidebar with all the good stuff. Resources, docs. So these docs I hear are built with React Native Web and built with native base. And, I'm not going to call it slow. I'm just going to say that there was a little bit of an awkward silence there while I was waiting for it to load. So here's the select. And see, it's got this really nice rendering on before it's an actual open select component. And then it just looks like a select component on web. And here select does not support sub-menus and things like that. And I want to be able to provide icons and rendering and things like that. So I'm not super happy with the select component from any of these libraries, which is not ideal. So yeah, it's going to be a challenge, and it has been a challenge to find a user interface library that I'm happy building upon. I've kind of actually been postponing my decision of committing to one of these because I'm hoping that one will improve fast enough that I want to adopt it. I had some excitement for Showtime's design system. They call it Universal UI, and I was excited because it seemed pretty cohesive. There seemed to be a lot of different things here. For example, they even have segmented control, which renders as an actual native segmented control on React Native. Like on iOS, it's the actual Apple segmented control. Really good stuff. But I didn't commit to it. My main reservation with this design system is that it is built in a way that I'm not very familiar with building upon. It's built using a lot of Tailwind stuff. And Tailwind, while it's incredibly popular in the web world, like it's kind of a weird thing in React Native where it's like we're trying to use class names to like render stuff on React Native. When it's like class name, it's like we're like, we've really over-engineered things if that's how we're doing styles on React Native. In comparison, Dripsy and Tamagui both offer pure TypeScript APIs. And Tamagui still offers a lot of the same performance benefits, maybe even better performance benefits based on the look of this screen, I'm not actually sure, compared to what it's like using Tailwind. It's probably not going to get faster than Tailwind because Tailwind, once you combine it with the preprocessor, is incredibly fast on web. So I think that's what the Showtime people are doing, is they are using some weird stuff on React Native that basically means that their components are Tailwind components. So let me show you an example, maybe, hopefully. I'm going to look at the source code for their checkbox. And maybe we'll see what I'm talking about, maybe we won't. Oh, they're not doing any Tailwind stuff inside of the checkbox. But the Tailwind stuff is kind of freaked me out a little bit because I don't really want to learn and adopt Tailwind in a place where it's not necessary, like React Native, and then have to go through all the pain of making it so that React Native Web somehow works with Tailwind when React Native Web has its own system for styles that are quite robust. Okay, so see this TW prop? So it's constructing a string, and then it's doing string logic with your styles. It's like, why is your code having to take this list of strings and then concatenate them with a space and then hand that? Like, why are we putting this into a string when we could be using really like robust type-safe things? It's not that you can't have safety with Tailwind, because you can install plugins that detect that you're looking at a class name and that you're using the right set of classes. But like the safety system that I'm already using is TypeScript. It's pretty good. I don't want to add an extra layer of complexity to handle this Tailwind stuff when really like the programming language can handle it. It should be able to handle it. So here there's this weird stuff where there's this string concatenation, and then you've got to learn all these things like this. Like this is a bit of Tailwind code snippet. These are class names that you need to go learn all these different class names. And I would rather just learn the design system that I'm actually using. Like I want to learn the primitives of Dripsy, or I want to learn the primitives of Tamagui. I don't want to learn all these like React Native or these Tailwind class names, which a lot of them are really obscure and really specific to CSS. And hey, React Native doesn't really have CSS. It's not really something we're encumbered by in the React Native world. So I still really want to see Axel de la Fosse's talk, because he did a talk on Showtime Universal Components, because they're the ones behind it. So I want to give it a proper evaluation, but just to explain where my mind is at on it, the Tailwind stuff has really been a turnoff for me. But the real turn on has been the amount of components that they've put together in one design system. So I don't really know where I sit on all of these things. There's like different camps. There's like the Fernando Rojo camp where it's, use Dripsy and then write a bunch of your own code to basically make it so that your app looks good using Dripsy. And there are more cohesive systems like Native-Base that have been around for a really long time and are, Native-Base probably has the most components of any of these other systems, the most individual components. So this is really compelling, Maybe I should be looking into this. It's so hard to make these decisions, and I've been putting off this decision because once I make it, I don't want to change my mind again. So right now, I'm kind of in between different worlds. For a while, I was doing my own custom implementation, and then that was getting a little bit tedious and annoying. So then I adopted Dripsy because that's been popular in the React Native world for a while, and it was pretty easy to install. Meanwhile, Tamagui was really hard to install at the time I was doing that experiment. So this is like the ultimate mess of the Zerve project right now, is that the visual design has now made some progress, and the implementation is a total mess where it doesn't line up with what the visual design really wants. And I don't even know what component toolkit to be adopting to start moving in that direction, because there's all of these different component toolkits. So I don't think I'm going to be making a decision that I'll be happy with live on stream. If anyone does want to say hi or mention your thoughts, now is a great time, because now I'm really just starting to trail off a little bit. And it's been a challenge, you know, with this product, because just focusing is a real challenge. Focusing is a real nightmare, and yeah, I've gotten myself into a bit of a mess here with the Zerve app. I decided to come live here on Twitch and share it because I thought that would be fair. I thought that would be good to expose some of this mess that I'm in. But I don't want to go on stream forever because I don't really know where to go from here. I'm still thinking about my options with regards to UI libraries. And, you know, I was tentatively going to be using Tamagui next and adopting Tamagui, because it strikes a really nice balance of being a cohesive design system and also having a decent number of components. It's not to say that I won't need to create my own components, but at least it does have a system to be building on top of. Man, this noise is really bad. I'm surprised anyone's still here with all this background noise. Or maybe you've just got me muted, and you're just looking at me like laugh at myself and smile and look at all these different libraries online. But if you've made it so far, I want to thank you for this short little stream. Hopefully this has been good to, you know, get me out of my funk or whatever, because I've just been not super productive, have been pretty scatterbrained on a technical basis and also a existential organizational basis. But I still care about Zerve as much as ever. I don't really think I'm going to be stopping. I just hope that I can get myself through these like bumpy patches and you know, put in the hours to get myself back onto track and get the visual designs and the way I feel about the product lining up with where the product actually is in reality. Because it's exciting that there's something that I can use, and it's kind of like a demo. It's been in demo state for far too long. I want to get it over the line so that it's something that people actually want to use and love to use, and something that helps them in their day-to-day lives. If you're, you know, building apps especially, like that's the goal. So thanks for joining me on this. Again, I don't really know what my next steps are. I just want to share the mess that the Zerve app is in, and I've done that. Now you know that we have a long ways to go on this project, and I'm going to be left kind of making the ends meet when it comes to the visual design and the component library. So I'll be working on that. Feel free to say hi in the comments on Twitch, on YouTube. I'll do a few shout outs here. Twitter, great way to reach out to me. GitHub, if you're interested in this code, you can see it. It's all public. YouTube, where of course I'm posting this stuff, and I'd love for you to stop by and drop a few comments. And that's about it. One more. Oh, there's Discord, which is not that active, but if you jump in the Discord, ask any questions, I'll be there. I'd love to say hi and talk to you about Zerve. So thanks so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next one.